Milk, my man, I wanted to wish you a very happy
There are
birthday.
thousands
You're
of
my
horror
best
movies
friend.
created every year. Some disappear after a few weeks, some become popular for a short period of time and are quickly forgotten. But every once in a while, a movie appears that creates a different kind of reaction. A movie that does not only try to scare you, a movie that makes you uncomfortable, a movie that stays in your mind long after the screen goes black. Because true horror is not created only by monsters, blood, or supernatural creatures. The most effective horror comes from something much deeper. It comes from the fear that something impossible could actually happen. The fear that behind normal situations, something disturbing could be hiding. The fear that the people, places, and moments we trust may not always be as safe as they appear. This is the reason why found footage horror has become one of the most fascinating styles in modern cinema. Instead of showing the audience a perfect version of reality, found footage creates the illusion that we are watching something that was never supposed to be seen. A recording, a forgotten file, piece of footage discovered years later. Something real, something dangerous, something that feels like evidence. And this is where milk and cereal creates its identity. At first,
Well, guys, goodbye. What?
the movie does not present itself as a traditional horror experience. It does not immediately tell the audience that they should be afraid. It begins from a place of normality. The characters feel familiar. The environment feels recognizable. The situation feels ordinary. And that is exactly what makes the transformation more powerful. Because horror becomes much stronger when it begins somewhere comfortable. If a story starts in a world that is already terrifying, the audience expects danger. But when a story begins with normal life, the audience lowers its defenses. They feel safe. They become comfortable. And then, slowly, the movie begins changing that feeling. The ordinary becomes strange. The familiar becomes suspicious. The things that seemed harmless begin feeling different. This psychological change is one of the oldest techniques in horror storytelling. The movie does not only ask, "What is scary?" Instead, it asks, "What happens when something normal stops feeling normal?" That question is much more disturbing. Because every person understands normal life. Everyone understands routines. Everyone understands friendship. Everyone understands familiar places. And when horror enters those spaces, it creates a stronger emotional reaction. The reason is simple. The audience can imagine themselves inside the story. They are not watching something completely impossible. They are watching something that feels close enough to reality. And that connection between fiction and reality is where found footage becomes extremely powerful. The concept behind this style is based on a simple psychological trick. The human brain reacts differently when it believes something is real. When we watch a traditional movie, we know there is a director. We know there are actors. We know every scene was carefully created. The camera movements are planned. The lighting is controlled. The entire world exists because someone designed it. But found footage removes that feeling. The camera feels uncontrolled. The image may shake. The audio may not be perfect. The characters may not behave like professional actors. And instead of creating distance, these imperfections create realism. The mistakes become part of the experience. The audience begins thinking, "Why does this feel like something I shouldn't be watching?" That feeling is exactly what makes this genre unique. The history of found footage horror is filled with movies that understood this idea. The Blair Witch Project became a cultural phenomenon because it proved that fear did not require a huge budget. It proved that mystery could be more frightening than explanation. The movie created fear by showing less. The audience never received every answer. The unknown became the monster. Years later, Paranormal Activity used a similar idea, but moved the horror into an even more familiar location: a home, a bedroom, a place where people are supposed to feel completely safe. The movie understood something important. The closer horror gets to everyday life, the more uncomfortable it becomes. Because the audience starts imagining, "What if this happened to me?" And that question is the foundation of psychological fear. Milk and Cereal follows this tradition by focusing on atmosphere and uncertainty. The movie understands that the audience does not need to see everything. Sometimes, what we imagine is more disturbing than what a filmmaker can show us. The human mind is extremely powerful. When we see a dark room, our imagination creates possibilities. When we hear a strange sound, our brain immediately tries to explain it. When we notice something unusual, we start searching for meaning. Horror filmmakers use this natural human behavior. They create empty spaces. They create silence. They create moments where the audience becomes part of the storytelling process. The viewer is no longer only watching. The viewer is investigating. The viewer is searching for clues. The viewer becomes emotionally connected because they are actively trying to understand what is happening. This is one of the biggest reasons why mystery-based horror remains popular. People do not only want to be scared. They want to discover. They want to solve. They want to understand. And the best horror movies create a balance between giving information and keeping secrets. Too many answers destroy mystery. Too few answers create frustration. The perfect balance keeps the audience engaged. Milk and Cereal uses this approach by creating a story where the tension comes from the gradual discovery of information. The movie does not immediately reveal everything. Instead, it allows the audience to experience the change. The fear grows because the audience realizes something is wrong before they fully understand what it is. This is a powerful storytelling technique. In real life, fear often works the same way. A person does not become afraid because they know exactly what is happening. They become afraid because they sense that something is wrong. A strange feeling. A small detail. A moment that does not make sense. The unknown creates anxiety. And anxiety creates fear. This is why some horror scenes remain memorable even when nothing dramatic happens. A character walking through an empty hallway. A camera pointed toward a dark corner. A conversation where something feels slightly unnatural. These moments work because the audience is waiting. Waiting is powerful. The anticipation of danger can sometimes be more frightening than the danger itself. The creation of Milk and Cereal depends heavily on this philosophy. The goal is not simply to create scary moments. The goal is to create an atmosphere where the audience constantly feels uncertain, feeling that something is approaching, feeling that something is hidden, a feeling that the truth may be much worse than expected. And creating that feeling requires careful decisions from the filmmakers. Every scene has to serve a purpose. Every reaction has to feel believable. Every moment of silence has to increase tension. Because in a found footage movie, realism is everything. The moment the audience stops believing, the entire experience collapses. That is why the performances are so important. Characters cannot feel like characters from a normal Hollywood movie. They have to feel like real people caught inside an unusual situation. Their reactions have to be imperfect. They have to make mistakes. They have to hesitate. Because real people do not always know what to say or what to do when something frightening happens. And that uncertainty creates authenticity. The audience connects with characters who feel human. They do not need to be perfect. They need to feel real. Because the biggest fear behind Milk and Cereal is not only what happens inside the story. The biggest fear is the possibility that something like this could happen outside the movie. The creation of a horror movie is not only about writing a scary story. The most important question every filmmaker has to answer is, why does this story need to exist? A horror movie becomes memorable when the fear has a purpose, when the scares are not random, when every scene, every character, and every decision supports a bigger idea. The concept behind Milk and Cereal comes from the desire to make horror feel close to reality. Instead of creating a world filled with impossible creatures or supernatural rules, the movie chooses something much more uncomfortable. It takes everyday situations and slowly transforms them into something disturbing. This approach is based on a simple but powerful idea. The scariest things are often not the things we cannot understand. The scariest things are the things that almost feel possible. When filmmakers create a horror story, they have many different directions they can take. They can create monsters. They can create ghosts. They can create ancient curses. They can create worlds completely separated from reality. But another path exists. A path where the horror comes from human behavior, from choices, from secrets, from situations that become darker step by step. This type of horror is often more difficult to create, because the audience needs to believe the world before they can fear it. The movie needs to establish normality first. The audience needs to understand the environment. They need to understand the characters. They need to feel comfortable. Only then can the story begin removing that comfort. This is one of the strongest elements of Milk and Cereal. The movie understands that fear needs contrast. Darkness is only powerful because we know what light feels like. Danger is only frightening because we understand safety. Chaos is only disturbing because we know what normal life looks like. The filmmakers build the story around this emotional transition. At the beginning, the audience is introduced to a world that feels familiar. The characters behave naturally. The conversations feel casual. The camera style creates the feeling that we are watching something private, something personal. This creates a relationship between the viewer and the footage. The audience does not feel like they are watching a movie. They feel like they discovered something. This is an important difference. Traditional cinema tells the audience, sit down and watch this story. Found footage says, you are never supposed to see this. That psychological difference completely changes the experience. The camera itself becomes part of the story. It is not just a tool recording events. It becomes a witness. It becomes an object that captured something terrifying. This idea has existed in horror for decades, but modern filmmakers have found new ways to use it. Technology has made the style even more believable. Today, everyone carries a camera in their pocket. Everyone records moments. Everyone uploads videos. Everyone understands what digital footage looks like. Because of this, found footage feels closer than ever. A mysterious recording does not feel like something from another world. It feels like something that could appear online tomorrow, and that possibility makes the story more effective. The movie also uses another important element of horror: curiosity. Human beings are naturally attracted to forbidden information. When someone tells us, do not watch this, our first instinct is often, why? This psychological reaction is exactly why the title and presentation of horror content are so important. Fear and curiosity are connected. The audience knows they might see something disturbing, but they continue watching because they want answers. They want to understand what happened. They want to discover the truth. This creates a powerful emotional conflict. The viewer is uncomfortable, but they cannot look away. That is the foundation of effective horror storytelling. Now, when we analyze the structure of Milk and Cereal, the movie follows a classic escalation pattern. The first stage is introduction. The audience learns the world. They learn the characters. Nothing appears completely dangerous. The movie creates a foundation of normality. The second stage is uncertainty. Small details begin changing the viewer's perception. Things that seemed insignificant become important. A strange moment. A suspicious reaction. An unusual event. The audience starts questioning what they are seeing. The third stage is realization. The viewer understands that the situation is not what it appeared to be. The comfortable world created at the beginning starts disappearing. This is where psychological horror becomes strongest, because the audience is no longer simply watching events happen. They are experiencing the collapse of certainty. The movie plays with the idea that reality can change without warning. One moment, everything feels normal. The next moment, the same environment feels completely different. This is a common technique in great horror films. A house does not become scary because the house changes. The house becomes scary because our perception of it changes. The hallway is the same hallway. The room is the same room. The location has not changed, but the meaning has changed. And once the audience associate a place with fear, it becomes almost impossible to see that place the same way again. This is why horror has such a strong connection with memory. A great horror movie does not end when the credits appear. It continues inside the viewer's imagination. A successful horror filmmaker understands that the audience's mind is the final location where the story exists. The movie provides the information. The viewer creates the fear. This is especially important with found footage because the style encourages participation. The audience searches the frame. They look at the background. They listen carefully. They analyze every detail. Every second becomes important. This is very different from traditional storytelling, where the director controls exactly what the audience sees. Found footage creates a feeling of discovery. It gives the audience the illusion of control. But at the same time, it creates anxiety, because viewers know there may be something hidden that they missed. That feeling creates replay value. People return to the movie because they want to find details they did not notice the first time. They want to understand moments that seemed confusing. They want to create their own interpretation. And that is one reason why movies like this generate discussions online. A horror movie becomes more powerful when people do not stop talking about it after watching. When viewers debate the meaning, when they share theories, when they explain what they believe happened. Because conversation extends the life of the film. The story continues outside the screen. Another important aspect of the creation of Milk and Cereal is the balance between realism and entertainment. A movie cannot simply feel real. It also needs to be engaging. The audience needs emotional connection. They need tension. They need progression. Real life does not always have perfect storytelling, but cinema needs structure. The filmmaker has to create the illusion of reality while carefully controlling every moment. This is one of the biggest challenges of the found footage genre. The movie has to look accidental while actually being carefully planned. The camera movements may appear random. The conversations may appear natural. The events may appear uncontrolled. But behind every decision, there is a creative choice. Every frame exists for a reason. Every pause creates an emotion. Every reaction tells the audience something. This hidden structure is what separates professional filmmaking from simple recordings. A great found footage movie is not just footage. It is a carefully designed psychological experience. And this is why Milk and Cereal works as more than just a horror story. It is an experiment in perception. It asks the audience to question what they see. It explores how easily our minds can transform ordinary moments into sources of fear, and most importantly, it reminds us of something fundamental about horror. The unknown will always be more powerful than the answer. Because once we understand everything, fear disappears. But when questions remain, when possibilities exist, when imagination fills the empty spaces, that is where true horror begins. A great horror movie is not only remembered because of what happens on screen. It is remembered because of what it makes the audience feel. Fear is not created only by images. Fear is created by interpretation. Two people can watch the same scene and experience completely different emotions. One person may see a simple moment. Another person may see a warning. Another may see something deeply disturbing. This happens because horror does not exist only inside the movie. It exists inside the mind of the viewer. And this is the psychological foundation behind Milk and Cereal. The movie understands that the human brain is constantly searching for patterns. We are designed to find meaning. When we see something unusual, our mind immediately tries to explain it. When we hear a strange sound, we create possible reasons. When something feels wrong, we begin looking for danger. This instinct comes from survival. Thousands of years ago, noticing a small movement in the darkness could mean the difference between life and death. Today, that same mechanism exists inside our brains. A horror movie simply activates it. The filmmaker creates uncertainty. The audience creates the fear. This relationship between the movie and the viewer is what makes psychological horror so effective. The movie does not need to constantly show violence. It does not need to reveal every threat. Sometimes, the strongest reaction comes from what remains hidden. The human imagination is capable of creating things far more terrifying than anything shown on screen. This is why many horror filmmakers choose suggestion instead of explanation. If a monster is shown completely, the audience can analyze it. They can see its appearance. They can understand its limits. But if something remains unknown, the brain continues creating possibilities, and possibilities are endless. This is one of the deepest ideas behind Milk and Cereal. The movie is not only about events happening in front of the camera. It is about how people react when they lose control of understanding. Control is something humans naturally seek. We want explanations. We want answers. We want situations to make sense. But horror removes that comfort. It places characters and viewers in situations where information is incomplete, and uncertainty creates anxiety. The same psychological process happens in real life. When people receive incomplete information, their minds often imagine the worst possible scenario. A person does not become afraid because they know exactly what is happening. They become afraid because they do not know. The unknown creates space, and the mind fills that space with fear. This is why silence is such an important tool in horror. Silence creates anticipation. A loud sound can shock someone for a moment, but silence can create fear that lasts much longer. Because during silence, the audience starts thinking. They start expecting something. They start preparing themselves. The brain enters a state of alert. Milk and Cereal uses this principle by allowing tension to build naturally. The movie does not rely only on sudden moments. It creates discomfort gradually, and gradual fear often feels more realistic. Real fear usually does not arrive instantly. It develops. It grows. It becomes stronger as we notice more details. Another important psychological element is the feeling of being watched. Humans have a powerful reaction to the idea that someone or something may be observing them. This feeling appears in many horror stories because it connects with a very basic human fear. The fear of being vulnerable. When someone is alone, when they cannot see what is around them, when they feel exposed, their brain becomes more sensitive. Every sound becomes important. Every shadow becomes suspicious. Every movement creates a question. Found footage horror enhances this feeling because the camera itself becomes an observer. The viewer is constantly aware that something is being recorded, but the question remains: who is watching? Why is this footage important? Why did this recording survive? These questions create another layer of mystery. The footage becomes more than an image. It becomes evidence. And evidence suggests that something happened, something worth discovering. This creates a strange psychological effect. The audience knows they are watching fiction, but the style encourages them to temporarily accept the illusion that it is real. This is called suspension of disbelief. Every movie depends on it, but found footage pushes it further. The less polished the footage feels, the more believable it becomes. A perfect camera movement reminds us this is a movie. A shaky, imperfect recording makes us think this could be real. The imperfections become part of the horror. Another interesting aspect of Milk and Cereal is the relationship between entertainment and fear. People often ask, why do we enjoy being scared? Why do humans voluntarily watch horror movies? The answer is connected to controlled danger. A horror movie creates a safe environment where the brain can experience fear without actual consequences. The heart rate increases. The body reacts. The mind becomes alert. But deep down, we know we are safe. This creates a unique emotional experience. We are afraid, but we also enjoy the feeling. It is similar to riding a roller coaster. The danger feels real, the emotion feels real, but the situation is controlled. Horror allows people to explore fear. It allows them to experience darkness from a distance. And movies like Milk and Cereal are effective because they make that distance feel smaller. The camera style reduces the separation between fiction and reality. The viewer feels closer, more involved, more exposed. The movie also explores another important theme: the difference between appearance and reality. One of the oldest ideas in horror is that things are not always what they seem. A normal person may hide something disturbing. A familiar location may contain secrets. A harmless situation may have another meaning. This creates tension because humans rely heavily on first impressions. We make quick judgments. We assume we understand people and situations. Horror challenges those assumptions. It asks, What if your interpretation is wrong? What if the truth is hidden beneath the surface? This idea creates discomfort because it attacks something fundamental: our confidence in understanding the world. We like believing that we can recognize danger. We like believing that we know who to trust. But horror reminds us that reality can be more complicated. And this is why psychological horror often feels more mature than simple shock horror. A jump scare creates a reaction. A psychological idea creates a memory. A loud sound can make you react for 3 seconds. A disturbing concept can stay with you for years. The best horror films understand this difference. They are not trying to scare you only while you watch. They are trying to change the way you think afterward. Milk and Cereal works because it creates questions. It leaves space for interpretation. It encourages discussion. And when a movie creates discussion, it becomes more than entertainment. It becomes an experience. The audience becomes part of the story because everyone brings their own fears, experiences, and imagination into the movie. That is the secret behind memorable horror. The filmmaker creates the world. The audience completes it. The screen provides the image. The mind creates the nightmare. And that is why the most powerful horror movies are not always the ones that show the most terrifying things. Sometimes, the most terrifying movies are the ones that make you look at ordinary life differently. Because, after the movie ends, the real question is not, was that scary? The real question becomes, what if something like this could actually happen? The ending of Milk and Cereal is where the movie reveals its true purpose. A normal horror movie often builds toward one final confrontation. The monster is revealed. The mystery is solved. The audience receives the explanation they were waiting for. But the most effective psychological horror stories often take a different direction. They understand that the moment everything is explained is also the moment fear begins to disappear. Because fear lives inside uncertainty. The unknown creates imagination. The imagination creates possibilities. And possibilities are what make horror powerful. The ending of Milk and Cereal does not simply exist to provide answers. It exists to force the audience to rethink everything they have watched before. The final moments change the way previous scenes are interpreted. Details that seemed unimportant suddenly become meaningful. Actions that appeared normal start looking suspicious. The audience begins mentally returning to earlier moments and asking, was the truth visible from the beginning? This is one of the most effective techniques in storytelling. A great ending does not only finish the story. It changes the entire story. It makes the audience reconsider what they thought they understood. This creates a second experience after the movie ends. The first time watching is about discovering what happens. The second time is about discovering what was hidden. This is why movies with strong mysteries often become more interesting with multiple viewings. The audience is no longer searching only for the conclusion. They are searching for clues. They are analyzing behavior. They are studying details. The movie becomes a puzzle. And Milk and Cereal uses this idea by creating a story where perception is extremely important. The question is not only, what happened? The deeper question is, how did we understand what happened? Because human beings do not experience reality directly. We experience our interpretation of reality. Every person filters information through their own expectations, emotions, and beliefs. A horror movie can use this psychological fact to create uncertainty. The audience sees events, but they do not always understand the meaning behind them. And that gap between seeing and understanding is where tension exists. The ending also connects with one of the biggest themes in horror: the danger of believing we have control. People like to believe they understand their environment. They like routines. They like predictable situations. Predictability creates comfort. But horror takes that comfort away. It reminds us that unexpected things can happen. It reminds us that appearances can be misleading. It reminds us that sometimes the biggest threats are not obvious. This is why realistic horror can feel more disturbing than fantasy horror. A supernatural creature exists outside normal reality, but a realistic threat exists inside the world we already know. The closer a horror story gets to everyday life, the harder it is to separate from reality. The audience finishes the movie and returns to their normal routine. They enter their home. They walk through familiar places. They experience ordinary moments. But now something has changed. The movie has planted a question. What if? And that question is often more powerful than any answer. The ending of Milk and Cereal also highlights the importance of perspective. Throughout the movie, the audience is limited by what the camera shows. The camera becomes our eyes, but cameras can also hide things. They can capture only one angle. They can miss important details. They can create incomplete understanding. This is a powerful metaphor for real life. People often believe they see the complete picture, but in reality, everyone sees only a small part of the truth. We judge situations based on limited information. We create conclusions based on incomplete evidence. The movie uses this idea to create discomfort. It reminds us that what we see is not always everything that exists. The camera shows reality, but it does not always show the entire reality. This is one reason why found footage is such an interesting storytelling format. The limitation of the camera becomes part of the story. A traditional movie camera can move anywhere. It can show the audience everything important. But a found footage camera has limitations. It can be pointed in the wrong direction. It can miss something happening outside the frame. It can fail at the exact moment information is needed. These limitations create tension. The audience understands that something important may be happening just outside what they can see, and that creates one of the strongest fears humans have: the fear of incomplete knowledge. The fear that something exists beyond our awareness. The fear that we are missing something important. This is the same reason people are fascinated by mysteries, unsolved cases, lost places, unknown events. The human brain hates unfinished stories. When information is incomplete, we naturally want closure. We want the missing pieces. We want the final explanation. But horror often uses this desire against us. It gives enough information to create questions, but not always enough information to create comfort. The ending of Milk and Cereal works because it understands this balance. It does not simply tell the audience what to think. It gives them enough material to create their own interpretation, and that is a sign of strong storytelling. A movie that tells you everything disappears quickly. A movie that makes you think continues existing. The strongest horror movies are not remembered because of their scares. They are remembered because of their ideas. They create conversations. They create theories. They create emotions that continue after the screen goes dark. Milk and Cereal represents a modern approach to horror. A style where fear does not come only from what is shown. Fear comes from what is suggested, from what is missing, from what the audience imagines. The movie reminds us that the human mind is the most powerful special effect in horror. A filmmaker can create incredible visuals. They can create impressive creatures. They can create shocking moments, but nothing is more powerful than the audience's own imagination. Because imagination has no budget. It has no limits. It can create fears that no camera can capture. And this is the ultimate message behind the movie. The scariest things are not always hiding in dark places. Sometimes, they exist inside our own thoughts. Sometimes, fear comes from realizing that the world is not as predictable as we want it to be. Sometimes, the most disturbing stories are the ones that feel just realistic enough to make us wonder, could something like this really happen? That is the reason why Milk and Cereal succeeds as a horror experience. It does not only want you to watch. It wants you to question. It wants you to analyze. It wants you to remember. Because the true power of horror is not the moment when you scream. The true power of horror is the moment, days later, when you are alone, and your mind returns to the story. When you remember a scene, when you think about a possibility, when you ask yourself one final question: what if?
What do you mean you don't like it?